the Liverpool fans were then caught between the fences and the police in front of them, the French wilders behind them, and panic and fear kicks in en masse. There's just mob just thinking, and as a result, the police are on edge, just tear-gassed everything.
To the big football story of the weekend, Real Madrid won, Liverpool 0, the apex of the club football season, actually, Roger, and it culminated in the way so many before it have, with Real Madrid lifting the Champions League trophy, this time capping an incredible run of comebacks, cup sets, and last-minute magic. It was actually the favourites, Liverpool, who started on the front foot, forcing Belgian stretch Armstrong Thibaut Courtois into action early and often, but Los Blancos grew into the game, and in the 59th minute, Federico Valverde's Montevideo Chas found Vinicius Jr., who slotted one past Alisson. Liverpool would, naturally, muster a response, but Courtois was equal to anything and everything they threw at him, gobbling up shots like Joey Chestnut smashes hot dogs. And at the final whistle, your old papa, Mr. Carlo Ancelotti, wins his fourth Champions League title. But let's go back to the beginning, Roger, and talk about the mood heading into this one and some of the truly terrifying scenes that preceded it.
Yeah, this game was a heavyweight of heavyweight clashes. Think Tommy Pham facing up to Jock Pedersen and slapping him for 90 minutes. Real Madrid, Champions League establishment, a symbol of Spain, even down to the crown of the royal family, which is baked into their crest, facing Liverpool, who see themselves as football's ultimate outsiders. From an outsider city, they've been remade by American owners FSG into a true commercial giant. One team had gotten there by clipping off one new moneyed petrodollar aspirant after another via just a series of magical comebacks or remontadas against quadruple hunters looking for revenge, led by Mo Salah, the memory of the shithousery which knocked him out of that 2018 final, still fresh and front of mind. And the week before, they'd agonisingly come so close in the Premier League race, second by a mere point. GFOP at Emerald0013 summed up the stakes perfectly, tweeting, well, yeah, of course it's a big match. I mean, this is essentially a playing game to see who plays the Seattle Sounders at the Club World Cup. And the game was delayed for 30 minutes. A run-up to kick-off was overshadowed, pockmarked, undermined, destroyed to a large degree by the truly traumatic scenes outside the ground, which we will discuss in depth in a moment. Liverpool fans who'd spent the morning, it should be said, those scenes, Davo, the delirious scenes as they sang along the Cour de Vincent. I mean, that was a party which gave the Florida-Georgia college football game a run for its money as the world's largest outdoor darty. It was, when you look at that kind of footage, deliriously, before we knew what was to come, you think, oh my God, there's no way Liverpool can be beat. Liverpool by 1 million when you see those joyous scenes, right?
Yeah, their fans travelled en masse from Liverpool and from around the world, Rog, to Paris, turning it into a red party. And it was so joyful, and it was inspiring, and it was a festival, and almost no reports of any trouble, the night before, the day leading into the game, just behaving wonderfully and just, lighting that beautiful city even brighter.
Yeah, I think Andy Cohen came onto our Instagram and saw the shot we posted of Liverpool fans bouncing up and down, thousands of them, to Dua Lipa, One Kiss. And he said it looks like the greatest gay pride festival I have ever seen, which is, I am guessing, the ultimate. It was joyous. It was so bloody positive. It was a complete and utter contrast to the same fans being tear-gassed and worse by the cops, and we will discuss that in a second. Though I will say, as Camila Cabello wandered out onto the field for the pre-game ceremonies, nobody wanted or needed. That was just like, to me, it was like Marie Antoinette, let them eat cake style, Davo. The show must go on. It was awful.
And that's the problem, right? Because everyone within the stadium, the broadcasters, we've been at these events, the broadcasters are just like confined to certain areas within the stadium. The people who are running the actual game, they've got a clock that they've got to hit where certain things have got to happen. They've got broadcasters around the world waiting for, this event that they've paid, millions and millions and millions of pounds or euros or, rubles or whatever for. And it's suddenly, but the dissonance when we're seeing pictures all over social media of what's going on outside, and Camila Cabello comes onto the field with what I think even in the best of times would have been a slightly absurd song and dance number. And
guys, we need a really
awful.
absurd song and dance number.
Yeah.
I mean, it was absurd, but knowing that feet away, the other side of the stadium, tear gas was being shot at, still thousands of fans who were trapped. The human, because you and I were covering it on Twitch, we were seeing the real-time reports. And God, I will say it was so bloody hard to even want to talk about the football. That's why I want to say that up top. Knowing what the Liverpool fans have been through, including my own nephew, Jacob, Nigel's son, who was there with his mates and got proper roughed up. I just say sometimes football can cause such light. Sometimes it can create such darkness. But this game opened in surreal fashion. And we will unpack it. But for now, I just want to say, I wondered how much Liverpool players knew about this before they took the field. Because Andy Robertson and Joel Matip have both said how their families were caught up in the chaos. But looking at those players as they entered the field, Liverpool and Real Madrid too, Davo. God, if I knew what was going on to my own family, I wouldn't have wanted to just be like, okay, to work.
Yeah, definitely. They did seem really focused as they came out, though. And certainly in the first few minutes of the game, you could see the intensity that was there. But there's no way they didn't know about it. You know, they all are on cell phones, on social media, so hard to know everything, but they certainly turned their attention to the game as soon as it started.
And a game of football did eventually kick off, and I can sum up what Liverpool tried to do from the start, really by looking at horror movies of the 1970s. They didn't try and just kill Real Madrid. They knew they had to drive a wooden stake straight through their strange magic-propelled heart. They had to repel that mix of experience, Modric, Kroos, Benz and youth, Vinny Jr. and Valverde, with garlic, with running water, with crucifixes, with holy water. They charged out, Davo, in the beginning. The game began really with Liverpool attempting to land their punches often and early. Real Madrid, looking at them, Carlo pretty much unfurled the same tactics he did to land Everton, that epic first win at Anfield since 1999 last season. And in that game, it was a superbly organised soak up the pressure performance with Jordan Pickford and Michael Keane both standing on their head. Here, Ancelotti had a team of people who were actually good at football to work with. And he set the tone for the game in the 20th minute. Mane, hungry, lethal, cut inside and thrashed the ball. We've seen him do that over and over all season, Davo, but not against Thibaut Courtois.
Yeah, and an absolutely astounding save. One of those very rare saves that looks even better in slow motion than it does in regular speed. And you watch it more and more and more, and it's just remarkable. Knocks the ball onto the post and denies Mane.
More than a save. I mean, he was so bloody big, like a Belgian Jordan Pickford, but with grown-up man, full-sized arms, and he used them here in this key second when conceding that early definitely would have opened the hounds of hell for Real Madrid. But what Courtois did was so bloody game-changing. He flung himself on that ball onto the post, and he said about that moment, he said, that was a moment I knew I was going to have a day, and my God, that actually turned out to be an understatement. GFOP at Flaubert's Parrot, Instadust. Courtois was at the other end of the pitch during Tim Howard's performance at the 2014 World Cup, and he decided one day that would be him, and this was the day, as we will discuss, Dave. And we've said this Real Madrid team are the ultimate team of chaos and the ultimate team of moments. And they proceeded to defend with admirable physicality. They never seemed to panic. They'd lost 3 knockout games, which is hard to fathom for the ultimate champions. They've been outshot in every game. It's as if they knew collectively, after what we've been through, no one can harm us. We are impervious to fear, and they soaked up the worst Liverpool could throw at them.
Yeah, and I think you made the point earlier that what was so interesting is, look, we see a lot of teams, you mentioned your own Everton, who can put men behind the ball and defend resolutely and clear it out of the box. But the difference in this Real Madrid side is that they have Karim Benzema and Vinny Jr. up front running the channels, moving, and they've got players both in defence and in central and wide midfield who can find them with the long ball and on those runs into the channels, and they did it again and again and again.
And you could sense the more they did it, that self-doubt started to creep into Liverpool's play. Rory Smith and I had talked on European Nights actually a couple of times this season about how in these big games there comes a moment where the Real Madrid players feel a sense of their team's peerless history in the Champions League flow through their veins. And perhaps just as, or even more impactfully, so do their opponents, whoever they are, suddenly quake and buckle when they realise they are up against predetermined fate as much as they are against Real Madrid. And when that happens, even Liverpool, Davo, even Liverpool's defenders who have been so unbelievably dominant all season, even with all their experience, even with their demigod-esque dominance, turned into a mush of bits and slop. And no one lives to prey on moments of bits and slop, but clinically more than Karim Benzema. And in the 43rd minute, utter chaos in the Liverpool area.
Yes, chaos that took even VAR, took the robots at VAR minutes and minutes and minutes to sort out. Karim Benzema looked to have scored. It looked to be offside originally, and then there was like no flag, and then the ball reset, then a tackle is made. Was it Fabinho who came in, seemed to make the sort of deflection back that would play Benzema onside. He finishes smartly. Past Alisson, starts to celebrate, then stops as we realise we're going to have a prolonged VAR check. The inevitable disallowed goal ensued.
Yeah, I mean, it was chaos. It was like watching this Liverpool defence just part like the Red Sea. There were players just flailing everywhere. Alisson, Konate, Fabinho scrambling. I think the ball came back to Benzema, as you say, off Fabinho. And ultimately, it was ruled offside because apparently, and we only know this now, we've all become great experts. Apparently, the rule is, this is what the referee said on British television, that the defensive touch has to be intentional, which is somewhat insane, right, David? That you have to guess that, yes, intentionally Fabinho decided to assist the most lethal striker in the tournament.
Yeah. I mean, no one would ever intentionally put a back pass into the run of a striker, and yet it happens all the time, and that is intent. I think it's probably because it was his knee that caught it on the slide. That you can't be intentional off your knee. You know, I tell that to the Corelli mods who beat me up when I was 16 years old. I think they were fairly intentional with their knees.
Oh, shout out to the mods, mate. We haven't heard about them in a long time. It's great knee work, lads. Yeah, John Terrell, we take the knee in the face. You know, honestly, it probably didn't matter ultimately, this whole debate. But, you know, this was such an important moment to me in terms of the feel of the game. Before it, Liverpool really had been dominant. They've been on top. Looking at it afterwards, that only looked like being one winner. Liverpool suddenly looked like in moments they could become fragile. I don't know how you say Wendepunkt in Spanish, David.
Oh, me neither. I have to look that up.
Well, you look that up, Davo.
Yeah.
We sat through half-time, and the Real Madrid goal came shortly afterwards. Just a flowing move. Valverde cutting through the right after some Modric wizardry, freed him down the channel and drilled the ball at an angle, far post, lurking in his cloak of invisibility. He wasn't really that invisible, but I'm just trying to be kind to Trent, David. We gave him acres of space in which to operate and slap home deliriously, right?
Yeah, he had no idea what was going on over his back shoulder. Rog, yeah, you're right. It was a punto de retorno, or I would rather say in Spanish, punto de retorno. And the Uruguayan Valverde down the right, who'd looked useful all game, put in a pinpoint chasse or something to the back post. And 1-0. And it was not undeserved, Rog. Was not an undeserved goal.
I mean, you use the word chasse, I think unkindly, but it does raise one of two outstanding questions about this strike. The first, was Valverde's shot a shot or was it a pass? I think answers seem divided, and pending whether you're a Liverpool fan or a Madrid fan or a British broadcaster, all of whom were like, that must have been a shot. That created answering Michael Owen immediately on British television, the Liverpool striker, So it was a mishit shot. Every Madrid fan I have spoken to laughed at that. My friend, the Madrid journalist, huge Madrid fan, Edward Alvarez, texted me to say there is no doubt Valverde meant it. I said, why? He said, Valverde is a much more clinical finisher than that. Irrespective, Davo. Second was, how much to blame was Trent?
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll look at it and think he didn't do a good job. You know, he'll look at that's the sort of thing that he needs to do. And critics of Trent Alexander-Arnold's defending will point to that. But it was pinpoint. Whether it was a chasse or whether it was a pass, it was pinpoint. It was from one truly, international class winger to a truly international class, inside front man. Great speed from Vinicius Jr. to get on the end of it. These are the moments you learn from.
Now, Trent, when you look at the goal, looked over his shoulder once in the build-up, but never again. So, he was out of position ultimately, unable to shuffle over by a matter of really a foot. And former Liverpool midfielder Didier Hamann actually went on Twitter and said this was not Trent's fault. If you look at the play, he'd made the decision to keep the offside line up with his centre-backs. But the truth was, he never checked for Vinny, the best Vinny since Don Furio. And whatever the blame on TAA, Vinicius probably could not believe the acres of space he had to move into. And happy for that human being in that moment, Vinny Jr., a young player who arrived in Spain on a huge transfer fee and had become almost a joke in La Liga for his wildly uncalibrated finishing, massive expectations, was almost written off, but he has come not just good this year, but great in Champions League run. 4 goals, I think 6 assists, and the game winner in the final. And that it was Vinicius Jr. will probably be a forever agony for Trent, a player who had been done twice by Vinny in the 2021 quarter-final. And you saw from that moment on, Vinicius Jr. actually revelled in his goal. He taunted Trent at every opportunity. Yeah, a lot. And God bless Arnold. He's an incredible footballer. Liverpool actually built around his strengths in a way like Kansas City are built around Patrick Mahomes. And those strengths are otherworldly, but everybody has weaknesses, right, Dave? And in that moment, it was Trent's that were preyed upon.
But look, he's a young footballer. And this is, there sometimes becomes this thing in talking about Liverpool that you have to be very careful what you say so you don't offend anybody. And I loathe this, editing that everyone in the media has to do, it seems. But Trent Alexander-Arnold is a young footballer. He's going to make mistakes. What's the making of him as an athlete is his ability to learn from those moments and become a better footballer. And he's obviously has incredible ability. He has incredible skills. He has incredible strong points. And I think pointing out that this might have been a mistake is not like treason. It's not treachery from anybody who is a non sort of dyed-in-the-wool red. It's something he learns from. It's something he moves on from. It's something that makes him stronger.
Real Madrid fans started to entertain themselves by yelling, Michael Jordan better, at LeBron James, who was standing there gobsmacked in his box, God bless, as his Liverpool tried to summon a response in the, should we say, copious amount of time they had to conjure one. But Courtois then just stepped up to shut down the game, parrying Salah at the far post. He said he felt this, the more saves he made, the more dominant that he felt, that he was utterly in the zone. There was one from Jota, 82nd minute, Mo Salah charged in from the right. My God, we have watched Mo score that goal again so many times this season. Yeah, you feel that there's a goal as he charges in. He's that lethal, but Courtois merely raised a massive right arm and swatted it aside with his wrist. It was jaw-dropping to watch.
Yeah, I do think, though, that if we make it all about Courtois, and who was incredible in this game, but if we make it all about Courtois, we let Liverpool off the hook a little bit, because we've seen Jurgen Klopp so many times this season make those changes that win the game, and this time the changes he made didn't really make the difference. It didn't really change the energy of the affair. And I do think that, it was about the lack of true chances created. That was the sort of staggering thing for the last 20, 25 minutes of the game. And certainly Liverpool's central midfield just seemed wooden, a little slow, a little bit not up for that fight. at the end of the game? I don't know. But there was something, another final in which Liverpool, failed to score. I think there's got to be some questions being asked about that.
On Courtois, 9 saves, the most on record in a Champions League final. He's essentially Belgian Brad Guzan. I think he made 55 saves in the 13 games in the Champions League this season. And incredibly, for contrast, Ederson only made 57 saves during the 38 entire league campaign for Manchester City. That's how crucial a piece Courtois was. And I did love his quote post-game when he said, "Today I needed to win a final for my career, for all the hard work, to put some respect on my name, because I don't think I get enough respect, especially in England." But on your Liverpool point, I did see a tired Liverpool, saw a mentally, physically shattered Liverpool. We'd said before the final that ultimately some of the Liverpool sides, when you factor in the internationals they played in the African Nations Cup, had played game 70, I think this was, of their season. And down the stretch, we saw this. They kept winning in the Premier League. But my God, the free-flowing, just poetic dominance of January and February, a very different team. It was almost as if the quadruple had caught up with them, David. I did wonder what was going on in Salah's mind. I felt for him as his revenge game floundered, having Courtois as his daddy, knowing he had lost the African Cup of Nations, World Cup qualification, been pipped for the league, all within 16 weeks, and now this. Having given everything for each of those causes. But, you've also got to marvel at Madrid. Klopp likes to hail Liverpool as the mentality monsters. What then are Real Madrid? I look at them and I'm like, if there was a football team with David Blaine, Houdini, very good left back, Amelia Earnhardt playing out the middle, and maybe Bear Grylls, causing mayhem up front. If they formed a football team, Carlo Ancelotti's Madrid team would outwit, outgrind and outlast even them, right?
Yeah, they'd figure some way. Without a doubt. Just one other point to your Liverpool point about the fatigue. I also think that the double that they won, both games won in extra time, both games won after penalties, those are exhausting. Those start to take it out of you as well. In the Premier League until the final day of the season, Champions League until the final. It's just there is a cost that comes from competing on all those fronts, without a doubt. And Real Madrid, incredible. Looking at that team at the beginning of the season, looking at what they've become by now, looking at them at every single stage, like every single round of this Champions League was a battle. So much storyline. You can almost take any of those fixtures and it's so much storyline, so much unexpected triumph, and just the nature of their victories. And just the nature of that team, it's unlike anything I've really ever seen. Outstanding individuals. I can't really define the way they really play football. I don't really understand the true style. It's certainly not the Real Madrid of yore, but they're just finding a way to win games under the perfect manager at the perfect time. And, they're fun to watch.
Rory Smith called it in our last European Nights podcast when we predicted how this game would go. And he's a Liverpool fan, Davo. And he said, I think if both teams played to their absolute maximum, Liverpool would probably win. Real might have superior individuals just about, certainly in key areas, but Liverpool are a much more cogent team. But then it's the Champions League. It's Real Madrid. It's this season. So he said, what will happen is that Real Madrid will win. I don't know how. I don't know when. They'll find a way. Real Madrid are very obviously going to win. I don't know why they're even going to play the game. And he turned out to be right. And this was a Real Madrid who had their identity rocked. We have to remember this in context. This is what's most impressive to me. Mbappe turning them down really shook them to their core of their identity. And this was some response to go out and do what they do, win the Champions League for the 14th time after an incredible run. PSG, Chelsea, Manchester City, Liverpool, Real Madrid's ownership, old money, desperately trying to work out how to play football against these petrodollar opponents. They will revel in the face of the teams they have beaten on that march to glory, Davo. But there was something messianic about it too. You say you don't know how they did. I don't know if you can explain it. That to me is when football is at its best, when it's ineffable because it's emotional and you are rendered utterly inarticulate. You know, becoming the first team to lose 3 times in the knockout stages yet win. They lost to Sheriff in the group stage, for God's sakes. And I am so bloody happy for secret agent Carlo Ancelotti. He left us for a reason, to scupper Liverpool. And he said that. By the way, I couldn't believe he kept this joke going. Even into his post-match, he said, Everton weren't happy when I left, but I'm sure they're happy now. And there was a lovely shot of Modric with his hand on the field on Carlo's face. The two self-effacing gents being like, you, and Carlo being like, you, Luca. It's incredible. Carlo Ancelotti, the most successful manager in Champions League history in his own right, 4th title as coach. I mean, it's hard to believe he was ever at Everton for those sweet 18 months, right, David?
Yeah, it was hard to believe when he said he was coming. It was just really odd seeing him on the sideline. And it was odd seeing him leave Everton and go to Real Madrid. Like, every part of it was odd.
I mean, it really, the truth is, and I love this. This is what gave me joy about the Saturday game, is that Carlo earlier this season became the first manager to win the league in each of Europe's 5 biggest competitions. He's now the first man to win 4 Champions Leagues as a manager. And this was a coaching legend who, when he washed up at Everton, probably thought, everybody did, that his great days were behind him. And within a season, he's a European champion again. Far from the dead-end job. He has got glory, and it's proof in football, as in life, that you never know. You never know how things are going to unfold, and that utterly is the beauty. As is the scene at the end. Benzema, 5th win, hand up Mourinho style during the ceremonies. 5 wins out of 5 finals for him, and Modric too. 5 Champions League triumphs in 8 years. I can't fathom that, Davo. I can't fathom that dominance in a tournament that is so bloody hard to win once, Dave. Outside of oligarchs hoarding Fabergé eggs and tiny giraffes, this run on the field in this ruthless sporting competition, it's one of the ultimate sporting achievements of my lifetime.
Yeah, no, it's crazy stuff. And, you know, I don't tend to believe that history means anything when 2 teams line up against each other. But it's almost impossible when you start like throwing out those numbers to believe that history doesn't play an enormous part. And that history is there because of how Real Madrid have set up and the players that they've attracted and the way they've played football, you know, for the last, 20, 30 years and even before that.
Yeah. And by the way, we should note an incredible stat. Last 21 years, La Liga teams have played 17 Champions League and Europa League finals against non-Spanish teams, and they have won all 17. That in a era when we're essentially cheering for balance sheets is a remarkable moment and a remarkable statistic.
Come on, you balance sheets.
Oh God, bite your arm off to have a
balance sheet.
Balance sheet. Bite your arm off to have a balance sheet at all.
Any balance sheet, a sheet.
You want a balance sheet? I thought you wanted a garbage can full of cash that we'd set on fire. Which brings us to Liverpool. Back-to-back weekends of loss. Here, 24 shots, 2 Madrid's 4. They hit the post. They came up against God Courtois. The players tumbled to the turf at the final whistle in agony. Big Verge pulled his shirt over his head in pain. I felt for them. I really did. They had journeyed so far, 10 months nearly, this campaign, propelled by the idea of collective pursuit of glory. They'd come so close and then fallen at the last. Back-to-back weekends of trauma. This team played 63 games. They won 49, if you include the 2 penalty shootouts. Lost just 4 games, but one of them was the Champions League final. As you said, 2 trophies won, but not the ones you wanted, and never scoring in those finals and only winning them on penalty shootouts. You'll never sing that. It's incredible to me how quickly the temperature on Klopp and the British press has gone from he's a great manager, he's a guru, he's a god, to for a great manager he loses a lot of finals. How do you think of this season, David?
Look, I think the English Premier League is the hardest league in the world, and I think the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup are also really hard to win. And I think it's very, very difficult to compete on all of these fronts. Chelsea won the Champions League last year when they finished fourth, I think, and a distant fourth to certainly to first and second place. The year they won the Champions League before the Drogba years, I think they finished sixth that season in the league and winning the Champions League. To compete on both of those fronts. Yeah, Istanbul, Liverpool, win the Champions League, don't win the Premier League. It's just very, very difficult to compete on multiple fronts in England. It's just incredibly hard. And to have got so close and to play... my point about the extra times and the penalties wasn't, they never score in these finals. By the way, that is a separate point. But the point I was making earlier is how exhausting it is. It's like playing 5-set tennis matches at the French Open all the way through. At a certain point, it's going to catch up with you. And I do think this Liverpool team looks somewhat exhausted. And they deserve to be exhausted because they've had a season of incredible endurance and achievement.
I agree. But it's that quest for greatness that ultimately did them in, that quadruple.
Yeah, totally.
Their own success destroyed them. Watching them down the stretch, it was like watching an army charging forward on too many fronts, stretching its supply lines. I know those of you who run logistics operations will be nodding now. It is sapping of energy. It's sapping of mental focus. And they did buckle at the last. It was as if spending the back half of the season chasing the quadruple, the vaunted quadruple. Couldn't even consider that as a possibility, but they made that a reality. They fought wars on four fronts, and there was a moment when the team became so exhausted, physically, mentally, that the quadruple they were pursuing turned round. The hunted almost became the hunter, and they were consumed by the very prey they thought they'd cornered and were ultimately devoured by it. And it must be agonising for Klopp. Because you look back at this season, how few games he won against his biggest opponents in the league, Manchester City, Chelsea, Tottenham, a lot of draws there and on the continent ultimately. And it was those draws against Chelsea, City, Tottenham, which ultimately did them in. And their Champions League run, yes, they faced well-drilled opponents, but they weren't the biggest scalps in Europe compared to Real Madrid's run. However, watching those players tormented at the final whistle, live on Twitch with you, I did get that feeling in the same way as I did when they lost in Kiev in 2018. And I said, and we discussed it, I said, I bet they win it, bloody hell, next season, which was echoed by Klopp post-game when he said, where's the final next year? Istanbul? Book the hotel. Would you bet against them? Would you bet against them?
I would take the field versus Liverpool in the Champions League next season just because it's harder. If I was offered an evens bet, it's hard. There are lots and lots of good teams who play in the Champions League every single year. And also, if you're going to bet on Liverpool to win the Premier League next season, only one team, I just checked it, Rog, only one team has ever won the Premier League and Champions League double, and that's Manchester United, who've done it twice under Sir Alex. And it's not been done since they did it in the sort of late aughts. So very, very challenging, but I'm sure that his team will be up for it. I'm sure he will improve this squad in the off-season. I'm sure even though after the game he said there's something wrong with the man of the match is the goalkeeper, I'm sure he will look at the game deeper than that and look at their performances at the end of the season and figure out what he needs.
Wait till he finds out that the man of the match who was the goalkeeper wasn't named Alisson. Then he'll really be absolutely foaming. But I want to be clear. I look at Liverpool and this season, and I think it was magnificent. The days out, the big days out, the big games, the joy they've given their fans, the memories. There was a banner. There's so many great banners, but there was a one I saw on Twitter in Paris that really bloody moved me. It was 5 or 6 lads. They were teens, my nephew Jacob's age, and they stood behind a banner which just said, "Living the dream our dads have seen." Harking back to the days when I was a kid, when Liverpool won European Cup after European Cup, and the entire city of Liverpool, because of both Liverpool and Everton, to be candid, was known around the world as the single greatest footballing city in the world. And that cross-generational memory making, ultimately, to me, that's what football is all about. And the news on Sunday showed that, to me, ultimately, that's what it's all about. And when judged by that, Liverpool have had a season that their fans will never bloody forget. But it was followed up quickly by news on Sunday that it was right down to business. Sadio Mane, heavily linked to Bayern, after winning it all with Liverpool in his time there, firing 120 goals in 269 appearances. What a humble, remarkable footballer. What a delirious joy it's been to watch him as part of that front three, of which songs will be sung for decades. But really, David, his announcement, end of an era for Liverpool Football Club. A gent who's given it all. Sadio, looks like he's going to be getting the bag, or Die Tasche, as I think they say in Germany, teaming up with Alphonso Davies at Bayern Munich, while Liverpool will have Luis Diaz bansheeing through opponents to help ease their pain. But is it the end of an era, or is it the beginning of a necessary rebuild, David?
Look, I think Klopp and Liverpool have just bought very well. We spoke about this last week, Roger. They've just bought so well. They have dealt with their squad so well. I still think they've got some players coming through. They obviously, Diaz was an amazing buy. Jota was an amazing buy. I think Mane is one of those guys that it's very, very tough to replace. I mean, who really in world football is a Mane-like player? I'm not sure. But I think it's a very attractive place for people to go and play football. And I think they're going to continue to, bring in top talent.
I want to close this by reading a letter from a GFOP who we know well from our Spotify green rooms, Andrew Millington, proper blue. David, do us the honours.
Yeah, I loved it. Gentlemen, at the end of the day, who do you think is truly happier with how their season ended between Everton and Liverpool supporters? Obviously, one trophy plus the Carabao is nothing to turn your nose up at, especially from the lofty position of 16th. But even still, I really feel like if you hooked up control groups to a polygraph and asked, Evertonians feel more related with their final moments. Thoughts?
God, you forgot the Florida Cup, Millington. What's with that? I mean, I love the phrasing, when you've won one trophy plus the Carabao. I mean, that is proper Everton.
Objection, leading the witness.
I mean, we talked about this in the last week of the season, how the delirium at Everton down the stretch at Goodison Park, and you compare and contrast that to the scenes at Liverpool on the final day. They came second by 1 point, but it was an agony and a trauma. We compare it to Arsenal, who come fifth, David. Can you answer the man?
I mean, look, do you remember when we used to talk about the Premier League mood table? It's something we used to talk about a few years ago on the pod. And a mood table, certainly at the end, Everton may be top of the mood table at the end of the season. But that is not the real table. Your mood is not, it's like when Donald Trump, I think he answered in a deposition that when he was asked his net worth, and he says his net worth is it changes on a daily basis depending on how he feels about things. There is a net worth, there is an actual value, there is an actual place where your team is at, and there is no doubt that Liverpool are in a place which their fans should feel good about, is in a place where there are a lot more questions for Everton fans to be answering. But it is some of the absurdity of the end of this season, is that you get these sort of strange results that come from how your performance is in the final game you play. What happens, and staving off relegation, staving off death, is obviously a pretty good feeling and a better feeling than not winning it at the end. But it doesn't genuinely put you in a better position. It's just a mood issue.
Look, Millington, here's the reality, and we talked a little bit about this, I think, in WGFOP on Friday. Winston Churchill's quote that the greatest feeling in the world is to be shot at and missed, and that is the Everton season. We survived disaster. We survived threat to our very being. If we had gone down, the financial implications in our current state, precarious state, would have been utterly, utterly disastrous. Everton, as we know, was truly under threat, and we dodged that. Liverpool won trophies, not the two they really wanted. They lost trophies, and they had to suffer bants. But I've got to say this, and I am a massive, massive blue. I'm saying this to you just as a dose of reality. The real question is, who will be happier of the two teams going into next season? Liverpool loaded with talent, with tactical intelligence, with a collective spirit which is ferocious and willing to just respond to the way they're run as an organisation, which is so bloody well. Or Everton, who have spunked a ton of cash into a garbage can and set that garbage can on fire. That's what we are. We're essentially still a smouldering garbage can and are still a broken club. And unfortunately, we got to wait. We got to wait for your answer, Millington. But we do need to cap the game by moving on from the joy of that momentary contrast of good vibes clubs to something which is the opposite of that, Davo. The awful scenes of which we talked at the top of the pod, the tear-gassing fans before and after the game, for which the French authorities shamelessly, even as of yesterday, keep blaming the Liverpool fans, talking of fake tickets, or really fake talk of fake tickets, to be clear, as to blame, even as Frankfurt and Rangers fans have revealed that they asked to talk to UEFA about the dire organisation surrounding the Europa Cup final, which left so many of their well-being in threat, the way that was organised in Seville. Make no mistake, the chaos and police violence before the game and throughout the night was the result of bad planning, terrible organisation, fearfully over-aggressive security and policing. Like that's not up for debate. I think we can give a tiny caveat. Paris, we have to remember, was a fill-in host. The final was moved 3 months ago from St. Petersburg, which is relatively last minute as these things go, in terms of having the opportunity to get things right. But I'll never forget, Davo, the moment we were covering on Twitch when UEFA just brazenly threw out that excuse ahead of kickoff, their first explanation that the game, quote, was delayed because of fans arriving late. I mean, that was despicable.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm reminded of something we've spoken about a lot over the last few weeks. There can be many truths that are all true at once. There doesn't have to be just one overarching truth. There doesn't have to be one overarching villain. But I do think UEFA and the French authorities have major questions that they are going to have to answer, and they're going to need a really hard look at their behavior. I spoke to a friend of mine yesterday who was caught up in the in a press where he literally thought that he was going to lose his life being literally squashed to death, only to get out of it and to then find himself being tear gassed when he had a legitimate ticket. And was just trying to get through a turnstile at the point that a bunch of locals had pressed through the turnstiles and overwhelmed them, and the police had just freaked out. Everything about the crowd control, everything about the preparation was completely and utterly wrong. There's lots of reasons for it. Yes, you mentioned the final being moved. Yes, we're just returning to crowd control situations after COVID. Remember, last year's Champions League final was played in front of, just a handful of fans. But there's just no excuse for this just appalling human-on-human behavior, and just some of these scenes, these images, I can't get out of my head, Rog, of just watching some of this video and just the sheer cruelty. There's obviously some of the, French and fear of the English, or antipathy towards the English, and I'm not saying the English don't have antipathy towards the French as well, but it's all tied up in the whole thing, the reputation of English football fans on the continent. But it's just appalling, and I'd love to think that UEFA and the French authorities can answer those questions. Unfortunately, this has already been politicized. French politicians just making ridiculous statements. Ridiculous.
And, I mean, it's now the Liverpool fans with fake tickets. That's now meant to be. I mean, this is just utter. I mean, it's a disgrace. It really is.
Look, I'm sure there were some Liverpool fans with fake tickets. That is almost like every sporting event in the world. This is something that people deal with, and they deal with humanely in most places. So
I have spoken to dozens of my mates who were at the game, and they talk about how the whole thing was just exacerbated by the French police from the beginning. They created a bottleneck to funnel 25,000 fans on their approach to the stadium.
Yeah, with those two vans, right? Yeah. Parked under the underpass. Just awful.
Held them for 3 hours. Behind them, there were gangs of French youths who were just wilding in packs, pickpocketing, fighting police. The Liverpool fans were then caught between the fences and the police in front of them, the French wilders behind them, and panic and fear kicks in en masse. There's just mob just thinking, and as a result, the police are on edge, just tear-gassed everything And we've seen Ligue 1 has been ravaged by fan violence all season. We saw the scenes at St Etienne over the weekend. And I don't follow the league well enough to know if this is how the police now routinely treat French football fans. But to see images of kids, of women, of fans in wheelchairs, all of whom have just been indiscriminately taken out with tear gas and then left wholly unprotected after the game. Real Madrid fans too, by the way, have reported this, that on the way out, they were just attacked and beaten by gangs of French thieves who the police showed no evidence of caring about the whole thing. It's as if they never watched a bloody football match before. And the thing that really causes me pain is that football has a history of blaming supporters for carnage and trauma. British supporters' hooligan legacy makes that a very easy smear, a very easy accusation. And the propensity, I will say, this was an odd part of the whole experience, living out, Davo, was the propensity for other fan groups in England to pile on in the name of bants. I mean, that to me was ultimately deeply self-destructive because it's all fans who are going to get tarnished by this. But it's Liverpool in particular. 97 fans went to a game at Hillsborough and never came home. They were crushed to death because of police negligence. And then they've had to fight for justice for decades. And I can't describe to you the echoes of trauma from anyone from Liverpool who was there, who would have experienced that Hillsborough nightmare, to live out something similar and then be tarnished by UEFA, Davo. I mean, in America, you call them customers. I know English fans hate to be called customers, but it should be said also, these fans who were tear-gassed and paid up to 550 quid for a legitimate ticket. It's crazy.
And they are guests in France. I mean, it's this remarkable thing right now where we have, the party of Marine Le Pen. It's the far right-wing party who are lashing out and calling the government and, ministers, liars for the state and calling for a true investigation. It's just so odd. I would really love this not to die down, and I would love to get some genuine answers and to see a genuine investigation. Unfortunately, I sort of know how France works, Rog, and I'm sure this is going to be just like, brushed under the carpet and it will all be over. But just how horrible.
Yeah, horrible. And the big conclusion that really scares me is that to host a modern final in our era of effortless travel, after COVID, in which we've all been confined to our homes, we've all dreamed of experiences, we've all yearned for that again. We all want to be in Paris singing with thousands of fellow fans, just enjoying ourselves in the sun. We don't think about, oh my God, this is going to end up with just kids who we're taking being crushed and then tear gassed. You don't think about that. But to organise a massive event, these are now seismic events, and these cities need to be prepared to be full-scale invaded, which is why the preparation, the size of the city, all of it needs massive thought. Not Paris on 3 months' notice, or, you know where I'm going with this, or Qatar, which is smaller than Connecticut. I think how is the world going to fit into that? How is that going to be? That is truly a darkness. And the legacy of this game for me will always be, Real Madrid, fantastic. What a win. What a triumph. But the brazen attempts to smear the English fans will hang over this game to me like tear gas above the stadium. Just the disregard. It's a symbolic moment of football. We always talk about where the owners, the bureaucrats, care more about the piles of cash that they harvest from audiences watching on television screens around the world, more than the supporters who follow the teams week in, week out. And we always say football is in danger of eating itself. This final, Davo, I really felt like we were watching football eat itself before our eyes, eat itself alive. Listen to the full version of this podcast and all our podcasts wherever you get your pods. But first, subscribe here for more Men in Blazers videos. And courage.